My name is Riley Morgan, 38, and for nearly a decade I had believed that life with Charles Jones was a steady, predictable rhythm, until it wasn't. The note was waiting on the polished granite of our kitchen island, right next to the back door key, the one he always used for his late-night runs. I froze. 4 sentences, written in his neat, almost unnervingly precise handwriting. I need to be on my own for a while. This isn't working for me anymore. I need freedom. Don't look for me. No apologies, no explanations, just the quiet, cold finality of a man I thought I knew. I stared at the note, letting the words settle like a stone in my chest. The coffee he'd made that morning still lingered in the air, a faint warmth mocking the chill now filling the room. My eyes roamed the space we had built together, the custom backsplash we had spent weeks arguing over, the Scandinavian armchair he never sat in but that I had insisted on keeping, the photos on the nightstand documenting vacations, birthdays, and small everyday triumphs. All of it, a stage set for a life that had just been paused or perhaps detonated. For a long moment, I did nothing. I simply held the note, inhaling the faint scent of him, and felt the first flicker of something I hadn't expected, clarity. Charles had always been the planner, the orderly one. I had been more impulsive, dramatic when provoked, prone to scenes that he found inconvenient. And now, in one of the quietest, most calculated gestures he had ever made, he had revealed the fundamental truth about himself. He doesn't make messes. He just removes himself. I made 3 calls. First, I reached Walter Chen, the divorce attorney everyone whispered about in awe. Ruthless, precise, unflinchingly thorough. I booked the earliest appointment he could manage. Second, I contacted the bank. I claimed simply that my debit card had been compromised. A small lie, but effective. They immediately froze our joint checking and savings accounts. Charles didn't get a chance to enjoy the illusion of control over me. Third, I went to my closet. His side was empty. He had taken the expensive suits, the belongings he valued. But some things remained. A jacket from the first weekend we had spent together, photos of us framed and untouched. Most tellingly, his running shoes, mud-caked, stubbornly left on the rug, remained in the middle of the living room. A small act, either careless or deliberately symbolic. I didn't feel the need to search for him. He wanted freedom. I was granting it, but on my terms. I packed a bag for my solo hiking trip, a journey I had planned months ago, and which he had always called boring. I slipped the note into the top drawer of my desk, a silent bookmark in a chapter that had suddenly ended. The mountain air hit me like a revelation. For 3 days, I hiked until my lungs burned, my legs ached, and the quiet allowed me to think with a sharp, unclouded mind. My phone buzzed, first with messages from his friends, then from him. They ranged from indignation, "Are you seriously ignoring me?" to desperate confusion, "Why isn't my card working?" I read them once, let them flicker across my chest like sparks, and then put the phone aside. I wasn't angry, at least not yet. I was calculating. I was waiting. When I returned, I showered at a roadside truck stop and dressed in the suit I had packed. Clear-headed, I approached the law firm, a discreet, modern building nestled in a quiet part of town. And there he was, Charles, slumped on a low brick wall, his head in his hands. His hair was mussed, his eyes red and puffy. Gone was the curated, Instagram-perfect image he had maintained. Now I saw vulnerability, confusion, and the first taste of consequence. Riley, he stammered as he spotted me. I didn't answer. My silence was a statement. What the hell is going on? He finally demanded, voice cracking as he scrambled to his feet. My card was declined at the hotel. It was humiliating. And the joint savings, it's frozen. I tried calling the bank. I adjusted my tie, a small, deliberate mimicry of his own composure, and interrupted, calm, measured. It's a security breach, Charles. Our financial security has been breached. His face hardened, anger mixing with confusion. That's not funny. That's our money. I had plans. I'm sure you did, I replied evenly, beginning to walk toward Walter Chen's office. He followed, pleading now, tone shifting from anger to desperation. Maybe I should have talked to you first. I don't understand. I stopped, looked down at his outstretched hand, and let it drop. You wanted freedom. I'm formalizing it. I opened the heavy glass door to the law office. The last thing I heard as it swished shut was his voice, thin, vulnerable, horrified, calling my name. For the first time in years, I felt a strange, unshakable calm. The storm of grief had begun to condense into something sharper, colder, but far more potent: clarity, control, and the undeniable power of walking away while staying fully in command of myself. I stepped out of my car and surveyed the small plaza where Walter Chen's office stood. The glass doors reflected the autumn sunlight, but in the shadows along the brick wall, I saw him, Charles, and the woman standing a step behind him. She had that curated corporate charm that made people underestimate her: a polished smile, perfectly styled hair, expensive jacket. I didn't know her name yet, but I didn't need to. I already knew she represented everything Charles thought he wanted: freedom, excitement, and a carefully edited version of life I would never allow myself to settle for. They saw me. His expression flickered from surprise to something closer to panic. She stayed rigid, hands clasped, her posture rehearsed. "Riley," Charles began, voice tight, almost pleading. "We need to talk." I didn't move. I didn't speak. Silence was my weapon, a sharp blade that cut through the pretense of familiarity between us. I think we can fix this," he continued, stepping forward. She mirrored him, leaning slightly as if to assert her presence, her hand brushing against his lower back in a way that made my stomach twist. "Charles," I said slowly, my voice calm but deliberately cutting, "you left a note. You wanted freedom. I gave it to you. But let's be clear, nothing has changed about the rules of engagement. This is no longer your home. You have no right to be here." He swallowed hard, his eyes darting to her as if seeking an ally. She nodded ever so slightly, a silent command: "Play along. Look reasonable." "We just need to get our things," Charles said, almost desperate. "It doesn't have to be complicated. Let's all act like adults." I studied them both. Every micro-expression, every subtle attempt at persuasion. They thought they were in control. They weren't. "I've already formalized everything with Walter Chen," I said, gesturing toward the glass doors behind me. "The locks were changed the morning I returned. You vacated the property. Legally, this conversation is over. Your belongings will be handled through counsel." Their faces tightened. His desperation was plain. Hers was something else: cold calculation beneath forced civility. "You're being unreasonable," she said, voice smooth, almost rehearsed. "It's her home? She's being petty. We just need a few things." I stepped closer, my eyes locking with hers. "You misunderstand. There is no we. There is no negotiation. There is you, and there is me, and I've already made my choice." A flicker of panic crossed her features. That single moment, the only crack in her polished mask, was enough to reveal the truth I had already suspected. She wasn't just an innocent bystander in his impulsive escape. She was a catalyst. Charles's voice broke, softer now. "Riley, please. She doesn't understand. It's a misunderstanding." I let the words hang in the air like smoke. Calm, controlled, untouchable. "All misunderstandings have consequences, Charles. You've already created yours." He stepped forward instinctively, but I didn't flinch. His ex-hand moved as if to intercept, to plead silently on his behalf. I didn't speak. I just watched. The control was mine. Then, with the deliberate calm of someone who had rehearsed this moment in every waking thought for 3 days on a mountain trail, I pushed open the glass door. It swung wide. The cool, polished air of the office swallowed me. Behind me, Charles and the woman hesitated on the threshold. The door swung shut with a finality that echoed like a verdict. I felt the weight in my chest shift. What had begun as shock and grief had morphed into something different: empowerment. I had acknowledged the betrayal, witnessed the manipulation, and chosen to act with measured precision rather than desperation. Their footsteps faded outside, a faint murmur against the quiet hum of the office. I stood for a long moment, feeling the stone of clarity settle in my gut. The calm wasn't empty. It was potent. It was fuel. And now it was mine to wield. I knew this was only the beginning. The next steps, the unearthing of deception, the legal battles, the final reckoning, would be long. But for the first time, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. I was no longer a participant in Charles's drama. I was its author. And the story was just starting. The office was quiet, almost serene, but my mind was anything but. Charles's departure and the polished, insidious presence of his new companion had left behind a trail of questions, doubts, and uneasy suspicions. I had given him space, formalized everything legally, and yet a nagging intuition told me this wasn't the whole story. Back at home, I turned to the one tool that had never failed me: evidence. Our old shared desktop hummed as I powered it up. For years, I had trusted Charles implicitly, never imagining that he could orchestrate such a calculated betrayal. But as the browser history loaded, my stomach sank. There it was, months of planning, hidden in plain sight. Hotel bookings for weekend getaways, dinner reservations with names I didn't recognize, private chat logs that revealed casual cruelty disguised as humor. Each message a small, precise cut. Jokes about my predictability, remarks about my boring routines, and the meticulous timeline leading to the morning he left. And then, the most damning piece, messages between him and the woman I had seen outside Walter Chen's office. She had been more than a passing flirtation. She was a co-conspirator, her role carefully calculated, her presence designed to facilitate his departure. I took screenshots, methodically labeling each one, organizing them on a thumb drive I titled Leverage. Each click, each captured message, felt like armor being forged around me. The grief was still there, a lingering ache, but now it had edges, razor-sharp resolve. That night, I didn't sleep much. The house was heavy with silence, each room echoing memories of shared meals, late-night talks, and fleeting moments of intimacy that now felt like ghosts. And yet, amidst the quiet, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. I was no longer helpless. I was prepared. Over the next few weeks, I began to implement what I had planned. I contacted Walter Chen with the evidence, a careful narrative accompanying each file, dates, times, and direct proof of premeditation. Every step was deliberate, every move calculated. The goal was not revenge, it was justice, measured and precise. Meanwhile, the world outside my home began to shift in subtle but telling ways. Charles and his companion, whose name I learned was Kyle, a woman with a poised exterior and a sharp edge, attempted to maintain their image of carefree, blissful freedom. Social media became their stage. Photos of dinners, weekend trips, and smiles that didn't reach their eyes were broadcast like declarations of triumph. But the cracks were there for anyone who looked closely. Missed promotions, office gossip, and financial strain that betrayed the carefully curated image. The most telling moment came with a voicemail, late at night, from Charles. His voice trembled as he recounted a vacation we had taken years ago, a time when laughter had been easy, and the world had seemed simple. His words tumbled into a request for money, for a trivial sum that symbolized more than finances. It was a plea for dependency, for access to the security he had once taken for granted. I didn't reply. Every communication, every attempt at manipulation was met with silence or formal legal response. Walter's counsel ensured that nothing slipped through the cracks, personal funds frozen, assets meticulously accounted for, and every request filtered through the cold precision of law. And yet, even amidst the strategic maneuvering, I allowed myself brief moments of reflection. I thought about the Riley who had once believed in naive notions of partnership, who had trusted too readily, who had allowed grief to dictate her actions. That Riley was gone. In her place was someone who understood the full spectrum of consequence, who could feel betrayal but respond with unflinching clarity. Charles and Kyle's narrative, their attempts at happiness, their social performances, crumbled quietly under their own weight. They had underestimated the quiet power of preparation, the methodical patience that comes when betrayal is met with calculated resolve rather than raw emotion. By the end of the month, I had transformed the house into a sanctuary. Locks changed, accounts secured, emails archived, evidence stored, every detail attended to. And in that order, that precision, the pain of betrayal was no longer an unbearable weight. It was a tool, a source of insight, a guide for the next steps. The discovery was complete, the deception laid bare, and yet the story was not finished. The final confrontation, the ultimate reckoning, the quiet triumph that comes when justice meets preparation, was still ahead. I had learned something crucial. Betrayal thrives in chaos, but it cannot withstand clarity. And clarity I now possessed in abundance. 6 months had passed since Charles left his note. 6 months of meticulous planning, careful patience, and quiet strategy. Every move I had made, the frozen accounts, the collected evidence, the legal counsel, had led to this final, decisive chapter. The divorce was finalized not with a dramatic courtroom spectacle, but through a series of precise, unyielding negotiations. Walter Chen had presented everything with an icy, undeniable logic. Charles's premeditated abandonment, the documented messages with Kyle, and the deliberate disruption of our shared life. Each fact was a nail in the coffin of his version of freedom. The final settlement was far from equal. Under the law, fault-based asset division favored me. Charles walked away with only the bare minimum: his personal belongings, a car gifted by his parents, and a small, court-mandated portion of the joint savings. The house, the lease and option to buy that I had renewed in my name alone, was mine. Every dollar I had saved for months remained untouched, intact, and a symbol of my independence. The aftermath for them was quietly devastating. Charles and Kyle moved into a cramped two-bedroom apartment in a part of the city that neither of them had chosen. Their combined finances were chaotic. Their once perfect social media performances faltered under the strain of reality. Promotions they had anticipated were denied. Their workplace, once a playground of casual flirtations and calculated smiles, became a minefield of judgment and gossip. I heard the news through mutual friends, and the satisfaction I felt was not gloating. It was recognition of natural consequence, of justice served without a single raised voice. Meanwhile, my life settled into an unexpected tranquility. I painted the kitchen a deep, calming blue. The Scandinavian armchair that had always felt like a prop was gone, replaced by a bookshelf filled with novels I had longed to read. Locks were changed, passwords updated, and every small tether to the past, Spotify, shared accounts, reminders of our shared routines, was severed. The final symbolic act came unexpectedly. Sitting on my new sofa one evening, I received an email. "Your password has been changed." I hadn't done it. Charles, still attached to remnants of our life, had attempted one last intrusion. With a few clicks, I removed him from the account. A door closed. Quietly, cleanly, decisively. I don't hate Charles. I barely think of him anymore. Hate is a hot, corrosive emotion. What I feel now is something cooler, the clarity of a resolved issue, the calm satisfaction of knowing that I acted with intelligence, not impulse. My house is no longer a stage set, it's my sanctuary. Every color, every object, every choice reflects the life I have reclaimed. Late at night sometimes, I let myself remember the woman who stood in her silent kitchen, reading a 4-sentence note and feeling the weight of betrayal. I acknowledge her hurt, it was real, but I also recognize how it shaped the Riley I have become. Resolute, clear-headed, unyielding. Charles and Kyle may continue to blame me for their misfortunes. They may cast me as the villain in their narrative, a ruthless figure who refused to play the part of the forgiving partner. They will never understand that I sought no revenge. I simply stepped out of their way and let the consequences of their own choices unfold naturally. And in that quiet, deliberate act, I found something far greater than victory: peace.